Hey there, Doreen Cumberford. I'm so happy to have you here on my Red Couch Talk today. And you're dialing all the way from Mexico. That's
Correct.
exciting. How are you today?
I am well, Angie, and thank you for having me and for the visit to your red couch.
And, it's a bit of a distance. So next time you're in Zurich, you have to let me know so that, we can actually meet in person because
I think that's a great idea.
yeah, we met each other many times already on shows and we're on the same group in FIGT together, but we never met in person. So it's high time we get this done.
Yes, it is. We need to have this conversation.
Yeah. And Doreen, you've had a long, let's say, expat journey, yeah, or nomadic journey, as we're not using the word expat anymore. I learned this week. So let's say you had a long nomadic journey. You now have a podcast called Nomad Diaries.
Yes, Nomadic Diaries.
Nomadic Diaries. I love the title. And I want to understand, and also our viewers want to know, why you do what you do.
Oh, well, that's such a great question. Straight to the gut, straight to the heart. I have been a coach for many years. In fact, back in the 1980s, I owned a weight loss program center, and it was essentially coaching before coaching was a thing. And so I've sort of been around that milieu and that information for a very long time. And I took that with me in portable businesses when I moved from Louisiana, where I met my husband, to California, then to Japan, and into Saudi Arabia for 15 years. And one of the things that happens with coaching is a wonderful container, and you can really support people in making huge strides. But last year I moved to Mexico. Fast forward like 20 years, I moved to Mexico in my retirement, and discovered that I really wasn't tired, that I wasn't interested in retiring. And I really felt like I wanted to make the subject of intercultural living and the whole subject of working between cultures, of diversity, inclusion, I wanted it to be more accessible to more people. Because when you work with a coaching client, you can work one-to-one, but on a podcast and with Nomadic Diaries, we can be making perhaps a different kind of difference. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that the reason that I do what I do is timing. It was just the right time for my voice to emerge on the podcast.
Fantastic. I think, you're completely right. This is one of the things, why I started this Red Couch Talk, because I just want to help more people.
Yes.
One-on-one coaching, I love to do one-on-one coaching. I really love it. But it's very limited in terms of, the scope of people that you can actually help. And when you think about all the things that are going on in our world and I'm not even talking about political stuff right now. I mean, I'm just talking about the mental health issues, for example. And also, like a lot of the issues we have with expat partners, not finding a job, losing their identity. And if you think about all of these things, our topic we discussed recently, repatriation, and how problematic all of this is. I really think we need more coaches out there. We need more support out there. And we also need companies to be able to support their staff better on international assignments. But there's I think you're also touching on another component. I would be very interested to hear a bit more about your podcast, what you got there. And I understand you're not tired. Yeah, you're full of energy. But I feel like there's such a huge potential for audience that in global mobility, at least, we never touched in the past. I'm just talking about,
Yes.
migrants, for example, refugees.
Yes.
We
Yes.
hardly, we hardly supported these people because, we were like working with the more, like, say, privileged expats.
Exactly. Exactly. I think frequently about the people in Saudi Arabia. When I was living there, I was very privileged in that I had a lovely house on a compound. It was a company house, but we all made them beautiful to the point where we had house tours. So I was very fortunate because I was living in air conditioning, and about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, most days I would get a knock on the door or a ring on the doorbell. And this was when I was an accompanying spouse who was floundering between careers. And it would be a fellow with an empty, large 2 or 3 liter gallon container for water. And he would be asking me for water. And I thought, these people speak Urdu, or they spoke Filipino, or they spoke another language, and they spoke Arabic, and they spoke English. And where were their coaches?
Mm-hmm.
Who are their coaches? What was it that inspired them to give up their families, move to another country, and take care of their families by sending money home every month? Because I just felt like the privilege gap was enormous. And so I think that there is so much difference in all of the globally mobile communities, between the executives and, like you said, the migrants. And I see we've interviewed a migration attorney here in Mexico, and she has gone up to the border and actually worked with the caravan during the Trump years when there were dozens and hundreds of migrants coming up from the southern borders of even south of Mexico. And it really opened my eyes to how I needed to take my message, or our message, in interculturalism and share it with them in a much more equitable way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like podcasting is pretty equitable, because even these guys who were being paid so little to come to the door for fresh water in the afternoon, they all have cell phones now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that brings me to a whole, like, new level of discussion. I'm just working on a inclusive content strategy with an intern from Zambia,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
one of the things I asked her now was, how much would you pay if I gave you, if you could pay for one of my programs? Because I'm thinking, if I could make, like, that program available to students in Africa, for example, for free. It's a
Yes.
it's a Hire Me Express program where they
Yes.
that basically for expat partners trying to find a job. Yeah, so it has all those strategies about how to find a job. But then I was thinking I could offer it at a low price level, but then what, as a low price level for me, is still crazy for somebody in Zambia.
Yes. Exactly.
So, but I also don't want to offer it for free, because then I feel like, it would be watering down my value of
Yes.
the program.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
it's sometimes I think we need to learn to think in a completely different way if we want to approach these kind of topics. So how did you take that into account when you started your podcast?
Well, for about 5 years, for 6 years, we were digital nomading, and we were literally, my husband had retired, and we got into the pet and house sitting side of life. And so we were traveling globally to take care of expats' pets, because we knew the expat lane, and we were very familiar with the fact that they needed support. And when that came to an end, I was really seeking a way to get interculturalism, the messages of migration, and the heart of migration out there, and all of the tips, the tricks, the strategies, the frameworks communicated to people who, even if they took one thing, even if they take just one small thing for an episode and they go take an action with that, that can have an enormous ripple effect on the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really my inspiration, was 5 or 6 years of mulling this over. What should I do? And podcasting just feels more natural to me than other social media methods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I understand. And I look forward to hearing more on the podcast. But you also write books. So in your journey, of moving around the world, what inspired you to write books?
That's a great question. I still don't really see myself as a writer, but I have a lot of, I'm highly intuitive. I grew up in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that instilled in myself as a child was 2 things: geography and the love of geography. Well, 3 things: a love of geography, the education about different cultures, because I knew there were other cultures out there, even at the age of 6. And the third thing was that I had this sense that if we all work together, even as a very young child, I had a very high level of intuition. Does that answer the question? That's really why I write, because I get a lot of intuitive downloads, and I don't always write about them, and I'm not always consistent, but it's a different kind of insight. In the final chapter, or one of the final chapters of the book I'm currently writing, I'm talking about when we use hindsight, which is the history or our experiences of living overseas, and we marry it with foresight, so what do we think is predictable ahead? And that is what creates insight, and the insight and it becomes the inspiration for the actions that we take that actually move us forward. And so that's kind of my process, and that's where it came from.
Sounds beautiful. And it also reminds me of my global competency model, where, big part is reflected experience.
Yes.
I think, this is one of the elements of intercultural learning that we often forget in the intercultural competence development models that we have
Yes.
in our body of research. I think we often forget that the experience itself is usually already, worthwhile, but reflecting the experience with somebody who is knowledgeable about these topics is even better. It's even more,
Yes.
moves you
Yes.
forward more. Yeah.
Yes, because you get more juice out of it.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes it helps you also, to dissect what is basically culture, what is personality, and
Yes.
some other elements that people usually mush up into one big.
Yes, right. And that's why I say my programming and my upbringing as a child in Scotland has a huge influence on the fact that I'm actually podcasting and talking now.
Mm-hmm.
In Scotland, it's very culturally accepted to talk to everybody on the street. You talk to people on the buses, at the bus stop, you get on the train, and you're sitting across from a wee old granny and you're chatting. And so this method of communication is much more intuitive for me than the writing. But I do love to do the writing, and I am inspired by the subject of the way that we can live our lives, and how interculturalism, or being using any model you like, we can make a difference. by learning and reflecting on those lessons.
True, true. Sometimes even with the simplest models, you know, we can actually support and help. So with that all said, can you tell us, because you're a successful businesswoman as well, can you tell us one of the secrets of success? So if we have, for example, a more junior person looking, watching somewhere in the world, I hope especially, you know, that to inspire women also to start their business. What would you say? What is the secret sauce of starting a business?
Well, you know, the trite and true answer that I would have said for the last 15 to 20 years would be to have a vision. And you absolutely have to have that vision. But now that I've sort of, it's almost like when COVID happened, my hair turned white and I suddenly got into another decade or I'm approaching another decade. I have different answers. And this different answer for me is not just the creation of the vision, but it's the day-to-day living into it. So what does that look like? You know, if you wake up in the morning and you know that you have a vision and you have a purpose and a why that is deeply installed inside of your being, what is it that you're going to live into that day that is going to move that forward? You know, is it reading something? Is it doing something active? Is it having a conversation? Is it networking? But being specific and having, yes, having charts and goals and spreadsheets is important. But I think we have to get more specific about the experience holistically in our systems. And that I attended an intercultural class by a woman in Boulder, and she was a PhD who had studied the effects of interculturalism on your body. And I think that as we use our body as a tool for working towards our vision, that there's bigger pictures emerging. And so I would say to every young woman who is opening a business, thinking about starting a new venture, is to consider the feeling and to work with the feeling level and the sensitivity level. We're not encouraged to do that online as much. And so I think that it's really important when you're starting off with any model for anything is to not only capture the vision, but also capture the other side of that is what is that going to feel like and look like in my body today? It brings it all very present.
That's the fifth element of my model. You talked about everything today. Also, you know, something I think we have, especially in the Western culture, sort of negated as if it would not exist. I sometimes say, you know, like in hindsight, when I was in the corporate world, I sometimes didn't even realize I had a body. Like,
yes,
you know, it was like, what is this carrying me around? I was it's very much in my head. And
I have been too. You know, I worked in I moved from the British Foreign Service to the American corporate world, and I can remember I was in Dubai. I had a body, and I was in Dubai, but I was really having an out of body experience because I was so much in my head.
And you know, one of the things I noticed recently is like whenever I go to yoga now, afterwards, like it has such a good effect on my work and my brain and how you know everything just opens up. It's not just the body that opens up, but it opens the mind. So I recommend any like type of practice to my clients because
absolutely
like we need that, and especially in these times we need it even more. And Doreen, you touched already on social media. So, you know, I want to come to that question as well, because I think you know, some of us think that if you have a business or if you want to start a business, you know, you need a great website, you need to be everywhere, you need to be on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. have your podcast. But I think, there's sort of a favorite channel for everybody. And something you already said about, something that comes naturally to us.
Yes.
So, where we feel like it's not even hard work for me to do that. Like, for example, for me, Instagram, I don't get it. It's just, for me, it's hard work. It's
Me too.
I don't get it.
I'm glad I'm not alone. I was like, yes.
And I
Yeah.
love taking photos. So, but for some reason, I don't connect with the platform. So what is your favorite platform?
Well, I would have said up until this morning, maybe Facebook. But when I got on, I woke up and I did like my little bit of my routine, which is quiet time. And then I opened up my phone. And then I noticed today that there wasn't much personal. It was very impersonal on my Facebook page. More ads and stuff that is just not interesting to me. So I don't actually have one. I think maybe I'm more interested in what I'm seeing on LinkedIn right now. I think LinkedIn got less formal. I always felt it was a bit unapproachable because it was very corporate directed for a long time. And now I would say that it's more relaxed. There's still parts of it that I don't think are the most fun or the most engaging. But I think that the LinkedIn is a good place for me to play right now. And I think as far as social media is concerned, we also need to follow our intuition on that. Is where do you think your community lives? Now, in actual fact, Facebook, I think, is where my community will live. And I definitely on Instagram, but I'm going to take one with Nomadic Diaries. We are going to take one social media platform at a time. And right now we have a bit of a presence on Facebook, and I presence Nomadic Diaries myself as me on LinkedIn. So that's my answer.
And maybe it's going to be podcasts for you.
Oh, yes. I think ultimately the venue is podcasting. But it's how to share that on social. I don't know. And we'll see where this grows, because it's a baby podcast. And people ask me, so how is it going? And I'm like, well, it's a baby and it's toddling, and sometimes it falls down and sometimes things happen, and we have to pick it up and dust it off for another week and keep going forward. And that's what you do when you're nurturing anything.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, with the business. My business is a teenager, and like a rebellious teenager. And I feel like they're at a point where we have to decide whether they're still going to live here or whether we're going to move them to like a student apartment or something.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about yourself, or, programs you're running, or things you would like to talk about?
Well, just one thing. One thing is that I am writing a book called Sequel, and it's about creating the next sequel of your life, but it's more dedicated towards people who are returning home from overseas. So it's called Sequel: How to Move Home from Abroad with Ease and Grace. And parallel to that, I've created a little workshop which is called Seamless Transitions.
Okay.
And yes, it's how to create seamless transitions. So seamless repatriation is the name of it. And I just think that for all of us, we're in a moment where there's so much churn, so much transition, so much uncertainty, and it's almost like we're living in constant transition. And if we can use the principles that I'm writing and talking about in the workshop, I think that it's important to have your own framework that works for you, and for you to find out your own magic recipe. And please come and listen to Nomadic Diaries. We'd love to have your ears on our podcast, and we'd love to have any feedback or suggestions for guests and things that people would like to hear, because in podcasting world, there is a sense that you're putting something out and nothing comes back. And that's okay.
Will also link to your podcast and any other interesting, like your LinkedIn profile and other interesting connections. Sorry, did you want to say something else?
No. Thank you very much for having me. And I love your red couch. It's beautiful. It looks very Art Deco, and it's been my privilege to spend a little bit of my Saturday morning with you today. So thank you for the invitation, Angie. And maybe we can have you, well, we know we're having you on Nomadic Diaries at some point, but perhaps we can do this again. This is fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I said, if we can meet in person and any stage, I think it would be great too. I just had another thought when you were talking about transitioning, repatriating. Are you planning to go back to Scotland at any time soon, or
no? I am not planning to go back to Scotland to live. I have been gone for so long, and I actually posted something on Facebook this morning, said this is on my bucket list. It was a story of a bin man, a garbage man, way up north of Scotland in a place called Barra, an island I've never been to. I do plan on going back next year and spending some time there, but I do not plan on living there. And we have moved to Mexico in our 60s and 70s. My husband's in his 70s. And, we've become very, very, very calm about the fact that this may be where we finish our legacy and tie everything up. And so I've also got a course on death and dying when you're overseas that I've started to speak about. So that's been an amazing gift of living in Mexico.
Amazing. Doreen, you do amazing things. And maybe we should meet in Scotland, because that's on my bucket list.
That's a great idea. Yes, let's do a tour to Scotland. Yeah, we could do like an intercultural retreat on one of those islands.
We can combine it with a workshop. So I have an excuse to deduct the flights or the trains from my business account.
There you go. There you go. That's what we'll do.
Well, enjoy your day in Mexico. And it was lovely talking to you. Speak soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Doreen. Bye-bye.